effort is not rewarded. So what used to happen is, okay, like there are 4 employees, and if you work hard, you will get promoted. And so then the default became everyone is working hard, but you still only get 1 person who's promoted. And so over time, what that sort of means is there's this interesting pressure where it creates like almost like a game theory kind of situation where I have to work harder than all of my colleagues in order to get promoted. But the harder my colleagues work, the harder I have to work to outpace them. So this system was happening, and then employers realized everyone is working way harder than they are paid for. Then what started happening is I think employees started taking this for granted. So now we started getting things like unpaid internships or really lowball salaries. And employers started to think like, oh, we can just lowball the fuck out of people because this is now the standard. That happened so much that employers started taking this for granted. It's not even going above is no longer going above. Going above has become the norm. A lot of people misunderstand this because they think that fixing an insecurity is the way to overcome it. But fixing an insecurity is not overcoming it. That is actually feeding into it. So the weirdest thing about overcoming insecurities is that fixing insecurities is not overcoming them. In fact, it just reinforces it. It just makes it go dormant. So this is the difference between fearlessness and courage. Very different things. To be courageous is to overcome your fear, to have the fear and to overcome it. To be fearless is to remove the fear. And then if it returns, you won't have courage, right? So I can do something like get drunk to overcome my fear, get some good old social courage. I mean, liquid courage and social lubricant before I go ask someone out on a date. Getting drunk doesn't overcome my insecurity. It just makes it temporarily disappear.
And you're familiar with bro science?
No.
When you go to the gym and you hang out in the gym environment, there's a lot of guys that walk around to claim that they have the right way of exercising the right way. It might be the right way for them, but if I in medicine try and take what worked for one person and try and scale it, I'm gonna run into a disaster.
Yeah.
That's why I think it's better to look at population and then try and narrow it. That's why I think the principle of starting with one and going up and generalizing is way more problematic.
But so this is a fundamental misunderstanding. The whole point of Ayurveda is you don't generalize one to the broader population. You develop a system that works for each person ideally. That's what their approach is. There's no generalization. There's some generalization, some necessary generalization, but their whole point is that when someone comes to you and this guy is a bro science and he says this works for you, the Ayurvedic doctor says the next person comes along and they try to figure out what will work for you specifically. They don't care about populations, they care about individuals. So I see so many people who have jobs, even have girlfriends, boyfriends, have friends, and they feel so incredibly lonely. And if I'm lonely, like I need to put myself out there. So what I'm gonna do is transform myself. I'm gonna focus on my social skills. I'm gonna get a good haircut. I'm gonna learn how to dress. I'm gonna start working out. I'm gonna become professionally successful. And now that I've become something that I can be proud of, I'm gonna go interact with other people and look at they're going to love me because now I'm sexy and I'm successful and I know how to talk to people and I'm going to talk to them in this way and I'm going to do eye contact and I'm going to do all of the things.
Why are you doing the accent?
To connect with you, to make you like me, right? Okay. Now you're laughing, so now I feel okay because now I know, oh, Steven's laughing. He likes me, I'm likable. So what we actually do is we create a false version of ourselves for people to love. And that's what really screws us because they don't fall in love with us. They don't like us. They don't like the broken, pathetic kid that I used to be. They like this glossy, polished version. If you want to go to bed on time, it's not even about bedtime, it's about daytime. You have to understand, okay, what is the part of my brain that allows me to sleep or keeps me from sleeping? Because you want to sleep, but something in your brain is not letting you sleep. There are a couple of important inputs that we need to understand. Number one, any kind of work that we need to do, if your brain is not satisfied with what you've done today, it will keep you awake. So this first 4 hours of the day, you need to be as productive as possible. Next thing, any amount of pent-up emotions or stress will activate your mind and has been artificial. What? Hold on a second, chat. Why is this not working?
I think OBS needs a reboot, maybe.
Huh. Give me a second, chat. Let's see if we can... Not that. That's weird. Hold on. I'm not giving up. There we go. I was like, I'm not giving up yet. Okay. Welcome to another Healthy Gamer GG stream. My name is Dr. Alo Kanoji. Just a reminder that everything we discuss on stream today is intended to be for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing we discuss today is intended to be taken as medical advice. If y'all have a medical concern or question, please go see a licensed professional. So, chat, today we are going to see whether y'all are smarter than a third-year medical student. So we're going to do something super fun. We took an old textbook of mine that I use to prepare for my exams, and we're going to be showing some of the questions. Textbook is a little bit outdated now, and we're going to see like if you guys can get the questions right. So this is going to be a text that I don't remember if this is like psychiatry board prep, third-year medical student shelf prep, but yeah, so we're going to see how good y'all are. So we did this, some version of this a while ago, and I was blown away by how knowledgeable y'all actually are. Before we hop into it, so we've got a Slido link that y'all can use. A couple of quick announcements. So first thing is we're sitting at about 7,673 guide sales, so thank you guys so much. We built Dr. K's Guide to Love, Sex, and Relationships. We've unlocked various things, and as we've said before, when you guys buy stuff from us, you support us financially, and then we use that to do these kinds of things. So we started the HG Institute a couple years ago. Thank you guys for helping us to grow it. We have continuing medical educations, continuing educations for things like tech addiction, digital wellness, stuff like that. And then we are now have some funding for some research infrastructure. So we hope to start publishing some of the stuff that we're collecting soon. Okay? We've been collecting stuff for a while, and we just haven't had the time, energy, or money, frankly, because it used to fall to me, and then I got busy. But now we want to have staff that can really help us with this. And if we can hit 8K, then we've got some funding for an app, and that is already kind of in the works in some ways, but we need some capital for that. So instead of going to a private equity firm or an investment bank, we are coming to y'all. And then if we can build it, hopefully it'll be good for you. The other thing is that, so speaking of the Love, Sex, and Relationships guide, we have a group coaching program called Friend Zone to End Zone. So in the guide, we have a lot of great concepts. We have some worksheets and things like that. But out of all of the guides, this one is the one where like practice is the most important, right? So if we have like a guide to like depression or trauma, there are some things, some skills to build for sure. But when it comes to social relationships, this is where like skills building is a huge part, right? And there's a lot of stuff. So this is a 20-week group coaching program that meets for 90 minutes a week. And I talk a lot about how our social skills have rusted. So we want to help de-rust you. Oh, I'm lagging again. And then, the goal is to have the rust come off, name some of the patterns in your life, and then you guys can kind of learn things and learn how to succeed together. So there's a lot of reasons why it's like hard to learn social skills, right? Like it's tough to like learn social skills because, so one of the statistics that I thought was shocking when I was doing research for the guide is it takes 50 to 200 hours of contact to make a friend. So a lot of the advice that we get on the internet, like, oh, go to a hobby group, like put yourself out there. Like, unless you're interacting with these people for 100 hours, then like it's hard to be friends. And so the goal of the group is to help y'all sort of develop some of that, when we talk about reading body language, reading tone, understanding when to speak, understanding how to speak, like not therapizing too much, forming connections, forming bonds, comparing notes. Also, there are elements of like accountability, skills building, and things like that. So each coach is unique, brings their own expertise to the table, but the goal is going to be helping y'all like craft, de-rust to implement some of the skills. And some of those can be learned directly in group, practiced in group. But the most successful groups are the ones that start to really structure opportunities to do things on the outside. Okay? And that's just kind of what we do here, right? There's so much that you can learn from a video. We can teach a skill, we can do worksheets, things like that. And then there's kind of like you can think about like, chemistry class, organic chemistry class, and organic chemistry lab. So our group coaching is the place to actually like get your hands dirty, metaphorically speaking. Okay. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to do, is chat smarter than the med student? Smarter than the med student, okay? Oh, no, I don't think that. Okay. So what we're going to do is show a question. We've got about, okay? And then we're going to see. We've got Slido. So what we want y'all to do, we're going to show a question. Then I want you guys, hi, everybody. That sounds so nerve-inducing. Absolutely. That's the point. You guys get this? This is like, so we had this Discord event a couple years ago about how to ask someone out on a date for Valentine's Day. And the thing that blows my mind is that when we were like, okay, like ask someone out on a date, I want to ask out my crush, I want to ask out my crush. And you don't practice. So the stakes are high and there's no practice. It's like we practice for job interviews. I practiced for my medical school interview. And if something is as important as asking out the person that you are hopelessly in love with, which is so nerve-inducing, and the stakes are high, like you just want to shoot your shot once and not practice and have all of those nerves like going wild all over you, that's a terrible idea. Right? So it's, and y'all know this. It's hard to make friends. There's a lot of anxiety out there. People are like socially rusty. And the whole point of the group, and this is like a huge part. So I love group work. I don't run them quite as much as I used to, but when, back when in Healthy Gamers earlier days, like there was a time where I ran 4 groups, and some of y'all may have been there, but I was running 4 groups myself, and I love it. And part of the thing about group work is like, yeah, you go in and it's nerve inducing. That's the point, right? It's like when you get into the water, oh, the water's cold. Like, yeah, that's the point. So what we want to do is create a safe environment where we activate nerves, where things are difficult. Okay? And then you will learn like how do I interrupt? Right? How do I steer the conversation? I had something to say, but then they moved on from the conversation. How do I go back to that? What's a good time to ask questions? You guys can post them in chat. I may catch it. But are y'all asking, like, Fargonaut, are you asking general questions or what? Like, anyway. Yeah, so I'm going to check out this new thing that's happening. Do you want to join me? And this is what I like about group is like, so especially when it comes to something like love, sex, and relationships, people may have solutions, and then people will try it out, and then we'll get variable results. And then what we'll discover is like, okay, what makes it so that one person succeeds and one person fails? Okay? I mean, you can just post general questions, but generally speaking, we try to stay on topic. And then sometimes we'll use Slido and stuff in the stream. Self-esteem helps, sure. And then I think building, like having acceptance from your peers and group is a great way to build some self-esteem, right? When you like show up. Anyway, the group work is great. Like I love it. Okay, let's get started. So, is chat smarter than med student? Let's find out. Just make sure this works. Wait, where's the... Yeah, here. Wait, why isn't this... There we go. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to go here. All right, so let's begin. Question number 1. Okay. It's over. I lost my mouse cursor. Question number 1. A 16-year-old boy is brought to the pediatric emergency department by his grandmother, who reports that he is not acting like himself. He reports that he feels incredibly great, does not need a doctor because he has powers to heal himself of all sickness. He speaks rapidly, and his grandmother reports he has not slept more than 6 hours over the past 3 days. She reports that he appears extremely revved up and hyperactive. What is the most likely diagnosis? Okay, let's find out. So here's the polls. I'm going to join. Okay. What do y'all think? Let me zoom in. ADHD, bipolar disorder, most recent episode manic, major depressive disorder with psychotic features, panic disorder, or schizophrenia. Okay. This is where, if you guys get this wrong, I'm going to be disappointed. Like, this feels really duh to me. Okay? So, what do y'all think? Are y'all, okay, so we have 87 people who have answered. Let's give people like, okay, 93 people. Go ahead and answer. Okay. All right. No, you guys are typing twos in chat. We have a poll. Yo, we have a poll. Okay, use the Slido link, chat. Okay, I'm going to pick schizophrenia because this is clearly schizophrenia. 16-year-old who hasn't slept, has the power to heal. Okay, let's see. All right, we can close it up. Okay, very good. Okay, so bipolar disorder is correct. That's a miss. Happens to the best of us. Okay, so what are the features of bipolar disorder? And if you guys have questions about this stuff, we can answer them. So features of bipolar disorder are reduced need for sleep. Okay, so the acronym for bipolar disorder is dig fast. Distractibility, flight of ideas, grandiosity. Oh, flight of ideas is F. Impulsivity is probably I. A is maybe appetite changes. Not sure what the acronym is. S is going to be, I don't know, sleep. Oh, yeah, impaired sleep. T is, what could the T be? Dig fast. Tangential thought pattern, maybe circumstantial thought pattern. I'm not quite sure. Right? So, yeah, so if you have decreased need for sleep, the ability, like if you've got supernatural powers, that's going to be A is agitation, maybe. You see appetite changes in bipolar disorder as well. Talkative, yeah. You see thought disorder, there's talkativity, there's pressured speech, right? So this is pretty classic for bipolar disorder. Good, chat. Grandiosity, delusional thinking, inflated mood, increased energy, decreased need for sleep, rapid speech, all are present. Okay? Second question. 15-year-old girl who's a competitive figure skater presents with concerns about her weight. Actually, she believes that she would be a better skater if she could lose weight and feels very upset and frustrated that she has failed in her attempts. The girl reluctantly admits that she sometimes eats a whole lot of food at one time, such as a quart of ice cream, a large bag of potato chips, and a whole jar of peanut butter. You will also notice abrasions on the back of her right hand. So this is a good question. Because it's not what is the diagnosis. It's, let's look. Next question. Okay, yeah, here we go. So which of the following statements is the most appropriate? Tell me about the scratches on your hand. I've noticed the cuts on your hand. Are you trying to hurt yourself? How did the scratches happen? I see you have scratches on your hand. Do you have a cat? Sometimes I see girls who make themselves throw up. Have you ever done that? Which, this is good. Right? So this is for medical students. So what I like about board questions is it's not what is the diagnosis. It's usually 2 or 3 different steps of reasoning that you have to do. What's the right answer? What do y'all think? We have 142 answers. Okay. Okay, so this is what I want y'all to do. We're going to post, can we also post a Slido link for questions? This may be a bit confusing. So what I want to do is, like, what we're going to do is if you guys have questions about a particular thing, Like, hey, why is this bipolar disorder, or what are the features of bipolar disorder, or why is this the right answer? I'll explain a little bit of the answer. And then what'll happen is we can like answer. I'll answer the questions at the end. Okay. No. Okay. So let's see. 253. Great. What's the answer? Close the poll. There is a right answer. Okay. So this is interesting. So I actually disagree with this. Interesting. So yeah, so I disagree with this. I think asking a question instead of giving a command, I think is the wrong answer. So this isn't what's their. Yeah, so I like this, their reasoning for the wrong answer. So let's talk about this for a moment. So what's going on? So first of all, the diagnosis is bulimia nervosa, okay? And so what happens with bulimia is that people will binge eat and they will reduce vomiting. There's a couple of things here that aren't, that are missing from this. So oftentimes bulimia has a normal weight. So their BMI will be normal. Not always, but it can be normal. So if we had that, so in anorexia, BMI is more likely to be low. Now, direct but open-ended statement is likely to be helpful. That is correct. The downside to a direct or open-ended statement, the problem with tell me is it's a command. So literally the language that I would use is, what's up with the scratches on your hand? Like, what's up with that? That's the language that I would use specifically with a 15-year-old. I'd just be like, what's up? So how did the scratches happen can be accusatory. So the problem with these other questions, these other answers, so I don't like this because it's a command. That's a no-no. I've noticed the cuts. Are you trying to hurt yourself? This is wrong because it's close-ended. We don't want to ask a yes or no question. How did the scratches happen is open-ended. Oh. Okay. Nice. Is open-ended. Do you have a cat? Close-ended. Sometimes I see girls who make themselves throw up. This is making assumptions. So literally the language that I would use is, what's up with the scratches on your hand? But they're not wrong there. I don't like giving commands to patients, especially when I first meet them. Okay, an 8-year-old boy with a history of major depressive disorder treated with fluoxetine is brought to the emergency department after running into the street in front of a car on the way home from school. He is physically unharmed but refused to speak to the emergency room doctor. You were asked to consult as you were on your psychiatry rotation. The emergency room doctor is suspicious that the boy's behavior reflected underlying suicidal impulses. Which of the following opening statements would be the most valuable in facilitating the boy's discussion of the situation? Okay. What do y'all think? You sure this is my answer? Oh, no, this is better. You sure were lucky the car swerved at the last minute. You weren't trying to get hit by the car, were you? What were you thinking when you ran into the street? It sounds like quite a day. Can you tell me about what happened after school today? Children who try to hurt themselves are very confused. Are you confused? Okay, what do y'all think? Why not do these polls in chat? Because doing the polls in chat, we can't queue up. Thank you so much. We can't queue up the polls in chat. Like, the whole point of this is there's like 30 questions or 15 questions, 20 questions. All right. 228 people. Bruh, you were so lucky. Okay. Let's see. If it isn't option 4, I think I've lost it. Okay. Nice. Thanks, chat. Okay. So, this is good, right? So here are the principles. So this is good. So the principles of communication. So this doesn't really invite anything. This is actually, the other problem with this is that it presumes they were lucky, right? So you're making a presumption that they didn't want to get hit by the car, that they perceive this as lucky. Maybe they think they were unlucky. You weren't actually trying to get hit. This is very, very directional, right? You're not actually thinking about divorce, are you? Hell yeah, I'm thinking about divorce, right? So you want to let them lead. Both of these are make assumptions and are leading. What were you thinking when you ran into the street? This is not a bad option, okay? Because there are times when you say, can you tell me about what happened after school today? Like, you could get some answer, like, nothing. Nothing happened after school today. Very common, especially with an 8-year-old, right? So I think when you're talking about an 8-year-old, asking an open-ended question like this without sufficient direction may get you a non-answer. Or what happened after school today? I had a honor society meeting. Thank you. So that's not a bad, C is not bad. But oftentimes what happens is in these multiple choice questions, you know, you've got, like, you're trying to basically find the most correct answer, which is different from what you would actually do. Are you confused is terrible. Right? So I usually start like super open-ended, and then you kind of have to narrow down. Like, what's up? Right? So if I was seeing a 8-year-old, I may start with like a, what's up, man? So what happened after school today? And then if they say nothing, then you say something like, so we're here in the emergency room. What's your understanding of why you were brought here? Right? Why are we here in the emergency room? Right? And then they'll usually say something like, because I did something bad. I was like, what did you do that was bad? I went out into the street. Can you help me understand what was going on? Right? So we want to avoid, generally speaking, the word why or why questions, but you can use them. A 12-year-old boy is referred by the court for evaluation. He skips school, stays out late at night, and verbally abuses his parents. He has run away from home on 3 separate occasions, prompting his parents to call the police. He has been caught shoplifting and has been in numerous physical fights with his peers. Upon further history, which of the following would be most likely to be found? This is a hard one. This is good. This is real good. I love this question. Okay. Which of the following is most likely to be present? Okay, so this is where, what's the diagnosis? What are the risk factors for the diagnosis? Absence of a biological father, absence of a biological mother, mother with anxiety disorder, patient being an only child, parents who do not use corporal punishment. What do y'all think? Okay, we've got 150. Are people not answering because it's hard? Not enough info? That's not correct. There is enough information. Right, so the logical chain is, what's the diagnosis? Do y'all know what the diagnosis is? Let's start there. They're not oppositional defiant. That's wrong. Good. This is a case of conduct disorder. Okay? We'll talk about the difference in a second. Okay. I hope this is right. We'll see soon enough. Okay. So, one of the trickiest things about the practice of medicine is that the perception of equality that we want, so a society can strive for equality. This is good. But when we look at the risk factors for disease and diagnosis, there's no equality. Right? So if you look at, for example, like outcomes after myocardial infarction, which of the following are all ethnicities the same in terms of outcomes after myocardial infarction? Absolutely not. Is the psychological risk of having no biological father present in your life the same as the psychological risk of having no biological mother? Is the psychological impact on the child the same? Absolutely not. So what's really interesting about the absence of a biological father is that this is not specific to the human species. So you can look at studies of elephants, and what you will find is delinquency of adolescent elephants is also correlated to the presence or absence of older males. So one of the really interesting things about this is that, like, teenage boys are kept in line more by men than by women. Now, this doesn't mean, so that we have to understand this is probabilistic. This is risk factors. These are probabilities, not definitive. Okay, so literally the way they do this study is they'll look at kids with conduct disorder and they'll measure a bunch of variables, one of which is absence of biological mother, one of which is absence of biological father. And what they find is that this variable has the tightest association. Only child doesn't correlate with conduct disorder. Mother with anxiety disorder predisposes their child to anxiety. And parents who use corporal punishment can result, increases the risk of conduct disorder. Now, why is this conduct disorder instead of oppositional defiant disorder? Like this verbal abuse of the parents, ignoring the rules, breaking the rules. Oppositional defiant disorder is usually like, is defiance of authority, which you can say, okay, breaking the rules isn't that defiance of authority, but oppositional defiant disorder is like, hey, put on your jacket. And you're like, no. It's not necessarily like violent behavior. It isn't shoplifting. It isn't criminal. It is defiance. So conduct disorder is more likely to be criminal, which also, it's not like the kid can just shoplift and he doesn't care if anyone is telling him to do something or not telling him to do something. There's no other party in the picture. But there are many things, right? So verbally abusive, skip school, this could be a sign of oppositional defiant disorder. So this is not, it's not a bad guess by any means. Okay? Next question. Does it affect 12-year-old girl differently? Yes. Okay? This is kind of interesting. Low IQ is a risk factor for conduct disorder. That's probably true. But there's a big problem with the low IQ, which is that kids who have conduct disorder who are smart are less likely to do stupid things and get caught. So this is where, there's a lot of research that shows that antisocial personality disorder is really common in people in jail. But the problem is the people who are sociopaths in jail are the ones that are stupid enough to get caught. So that's why there's a association with low IQ and antisocial personality disorder. There are a lot of people who are sociopaths who are just clever enough to not get caught. They won't be in jail. And if they're not in jail, they won't have low IQ. Okay. 18-year-old college freshman without prior psychiatric history is brought to the emergency room after being found on her dormitory roof, dressed only in her underwear. Okay, whoa. Despite freezing temperatures. Campus police report she was flapping her hands and climbing the banister, stating to an unseen other, "I will do as you command, sword of my death, to fulfill your prophecy." She accused the policemen of being Satan's horsemen. Her roommates confirmed that for the past 5 weeks, the patient has been acting bizarrely. Her speech has been increasingly disorganized. Which of the following features would you be most likely to find in her history? Head trauma, low intelligence, neglectful mother, physical or sexual abuse, or progressive social withdrawal? Good. This is a good question. I like this question. Okay, good. You guys seem to have the high... Oh, this is so interesting. I wonder if YouTube chat and okay. I wonder if YouTube chat and Twitch chat, we should do a competition between YouTube and Twitch. That'd be great, dude. Who's smarter? Okay. So let's go through this a little bit. What's the diagnosis? Good. Someone, Archie Asthana, knows their diagnostics. Very good. Okay. So. Okay. Good. So a lot of people are saying head trauma. So the answer is going to be progressive social withdrawal. And let's understand why. Okay. Okay, so I'll start explaining. So this is what I love about. So here's why Googling things and or using AI is not great for health. Okay? So let's understand why. So I think a lot of y'all picked head trauma because this is great. It feels like I'm back to teaching med students. A lot of y'all picked head trauma because you asked yourself the question, can someone with head trauma wind up like this? Can head trauma cause this? The answer is absolutely yes. But that's the wrong question. The practice of medicine is about differential diagnosis. Let me ask you a different question, and now y'all will understand the difference. If an 18-year-old fell and hit their head 5 weeks ago and had a head trauma, what is the most likely presentation? What is the second most likely presentation? How many people who are in a car accident 5 weeks later are in their underwear in freezing weather, flapping their arms and saying that they're going to fulfill the prophecy? Right? So that's the question to ask. This is why so a lot of people think that being a doctor is about treatment. It's not about treatment. It's about diagnosis. Okay? So you would see other things if it was likely to be head trauma. It's not that head trauma can't cause this. There are other things, like, and this kind of like, this has a real constellation of disorganized speech and behavior. This is really like textbook schizophrenia. So this is like a first break psychosis kind of picture. So a couple of things about first break psychosis. Okay, and someone said FEP, first episode psychosis, is correct. So first thing is that it happens when people are young. Right, so first episode psychosis happens a lot, basically for college kids. Really common. So the profile you want to think of, if you're really unlucky, it happens a little bit earlier, like in high school, but usually like young age. Now, why isn't it substance use? Because substance use is not as consistent or as progressive. Right? They say that she has had weeks of stuff. So if you're smoking pot, it's usually more acute. But this is where, if I had to say, there's another question you could ask. What is the first test that you want to run in the emergency room? First test you want to run in the emergency room is a urine tox screen. Right? That's something you have to rule out. I mean, she could be smoking pot every day. It could look like this. The other thing about schizophrenia is that it has a prodrome that usually involves progressive social withdrawal, flattened affect, isolation, things like that. So this is a hard question, right? And the head trauma is like, this is a good example of, nice, I'm currently 199th. Okay. I mean, this is not a great answer, but okay. Does that make sense? Is it mutually exclusive with the rest? Okay, this is a good question. Is E mutually exclusive with the rest? So this is another important thing about the practice of medicine. So if I see this patient in the emergency room, it is possible they have head trauma. It is possible they have abuse. But medicine is a practice of probabilities. Which is the most likely, right? So when someone comes into my office and they have fever and weight loss, they could have COVID, they could have multiple myeloma. Which one is more likely? And we can do tests to rule things out, but one thing that's really, really, really scary, or not scary, but is unfortunate, is the less clinically trained you are, the more tests you run. And the more tests you run, the more expensive things get. And we sometimes forget that tests have risks. So you could do a CAT scan to rule out head trauma. Not a bad idea, but I don't think you need to do a CAT scan. You can probably do a clinical exam. Because if they have head trauma, there may be a simple cranial nerve exam, a neuro exam, testing strength and sensation and checking for paresthesias. This is also why in the emergency room, we check for all of these things. Because y'all are right that a small percentage of people who present like this, maybe 90% of people who present like this probably have either schizophrenia or substance use. But there may be that 10% who does have head trauma. And so you have to rule that out, usually with physical exams. And then if you want to, you can order a CAT scan. It's not a terrible idea, but it's not the right answer. So 90% of diagnosis is just made with history and physical. And out of that, history is the huge part. Okay. 34-year-old white male was referred by his primary care physician for depression. Upon initial review, complains of feeling blue. His mental status examination reveals disheveled experience, depressed mood, psychomotor retardation, suicidal ideation without plan, thought blocking and slowing, and remote and short-term memory deficits. Judgment and insight are also impaired. Your provisional diagnosis is major depressive disorder. Which type of sleep disturbance would you most expect in this patient? I have a feeling this question could be wrong, but let's give it a shot. Decreased response to sedative drugs, early morning awakening, increased rapid eye movement, sleeping too deeply, sleeping too lightly, awaken too easily. Okay, I have a feeling this question is actually wrong. This is what's interesting about being an attending, is that sometimes you know things. That oftentimes question writers don't know. What do y'all think? A lot of people are saying 2. A lot of people are saying 5. Sleeping too much. Okay. D or E? Okay. So let's understand this. This is complicated. So, you guys may be right. Okay. I know what this question is asking, but it's poorly worded. Okay. While many sleep disturbances have been noted in major depression, early morning awakening has been the most consistently linked with major depression. This question is poorly worded, unless I could be missing something. Or there's something that I don't know. There's a piece of information I don't know. I know what this question is asking. So we're going to explain this a little bit. So in major depression, you can have hypersomnia or you can have insomnia. This question is asking which type of sleep disturbance would you most expect to see? There's a subtlety here. Early morning awakening is the most specific type of sleep disturbance found in depression. That is absolutely true. So in medicine, specificity, so if we take hypersomnia, okay, sleeping too much. Hypersomnia is found in hypothyroidism. It is found in depression. It is found in sleep apnea. If we take insomnia, insomnia is found in anxiety disorders, is found in depression, is found in hyperthyroidism. Early morning awakening is highly specific for depression. So if someone has early morning awakening, they're the most likely to have depression. That signals depression. This question may be worded poorly, or I may not know this piece of information, which is if we take 1,000 patients with depression, if we take 1,000 people, and this is what gets complicated, okay? So I'm going to explain this. The specificity. If we take 1,000 people with early morning awakening, what is the most likely diagnosis for all of them to have? Depression, no question. If we take 1,000 people with depression, what is the most likely sleep disturbance that they have? I don't know if it's actually early morning awakening. It could be hypersomnia. But hypersomnia is not specific to depression. I don't know the epidemiology and prevalence of like that particular feature. I know what the question is asking, right? So negative self-attitude, early morning awakening, these are two of the highly specific features of depression. Low energy you can have in hypothyroidism, but negative self-attitude is one of the things that like, I think I'm a loser. So it's a particular thing. Negative self-attitude is not one of the things in SIGI caps, like sleep, interest, guilt, all the DSM stuff. Negative self-attitude is like the way that you view yourself, highly specific to depression. Hopelessness isn't specific to depression. You can have terminal cancer and you can be hopeless. But how do you know if someone with terminal cancer has depression as well? Because their energy sucks, they have difficulty sleeping, their appetite is messed up. How do you know if they also have depression or if this is just cancer? Because hopelessness, possible in both. If they start thinking I'm a loser for having cancer, then that signals depression. Okay? So this is a hard one. I don't blame you guys for losing that one. Right? So when they say most consistently linked, and they say the hallmark sleep disturbance, yes, you're correct. It is the most specific sleep disturbance. Absolutely. It is the hallmark. Hallmark is different from the most common. Now, it may be the most common. I don't know. It could be the most common as well. It's quite common. But this is one that I would expect many medical students to get wrong, unless they studied, in which they'd know. Or they had, teachers who taught them this stuff. Okay, 35-year-old man is being treated for major depressive disorder with paroxetine. Uh-oh, this is not good. He has missed the last two appointments, leaving messages telling that I've been spectacular. His wife reports that he's been spending money on frivolous items and overdrew the couple's bank account. He now quickly becomes agitated and angry. During the interview, the patient questions your credentials and accuses you of being more loyal to his wife. He's not wrong. Let's be clear. Most of the interview is spent interrupting the patient as you try to decipher his rapid speech. In his rant, he threatens to cut the brake lines on his mother-in-law's car. Which of the following is the most appropriate next step? Okay, so let's be a little bit clear. Discharge the patient home as he refuses admission. Escort the patient to the nearest emergency room. Inform the mother-in-law that she's in danger. Inform the police that a threat has been made against mother-in-law. Tell the wife to have the mother-in-law stay with her. I hope you guys got this one right. Once again, me as a father figure will be disappointed in you as a surrogate child. All right, so let's start with this. What's the diagnosis? Do y'all know? Okay, we going to 148. When were we stopping? Okay, put in your answers, chat. Let's go. Haloperidol. Paroxetine is SSRI. So it's an antidepressant medication that I try not to use. It tends to be a little bit activating, so it can really give people a decent boost, but has a very short half-life. Can flip people into mania, right? So this is a good example of someone who may have depression. Okay, this is, we're just gonna.
We have like 400 voters, so I'm just waiting.
Oh, we have 400 voters.
450 right
now. Okay, well, I picked something, but it could be wrong. Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. It is a class of medication that we use to treat mood disorders, specifically major depressive disorder and anxiety disorders. We also use them to treat things like OCD at high doses. Let me see. I see you've been on something for 3 months. Y'all, oh, what's wrong for? Yeah. So paroxetine for depression isn't bad. It's just it is prone to side effects, but isn't like a solid activating medication. So one of the things I don't like about paroxetine is it has a very low half-life. So if you ever miss a dose, so the half-life of fluoxetine, which is Prozac, is like 70 hours. So if you miss a dose, you don't get a whole lot of side effects. If you miss a single dose of paroxetine, you're likely to have side effects. So a big consideration that I have when I'm prescribing paroxetine is how consistently is this person able to take their medication? Okay. So this is a good case of escort the patient to the nearest ED, right? What's going on with them? There are threats, right? So there's some amount of arguably homicidal ideation. They're doing damage to their life. They're recklessly spending. Those are going to be around. Those bills are going to be around when they're done. I've had some patients who can basically kind of get out of paying bills if they return everything, if there's good evidence of like mania. Like I've had patients that will buy a car and they've been able to return the car and I have to like write them a letter. They usually don't get a full refund, but like if you buy a $50,000 car, they may be able to get $40K back or $45K back. Whereas the value of the car may be like $30K on resale the moment you drive it off the lot. So sometimes people are nice about it. But this is absolutely a case of like taking them to the nearest emergency room. No brainer. Okay. Homicidal threat. All right. You got to take him to the ED. 26-year-old woman presents to the emergency department in an acutely distressed, nervous state. You can get a doctor's note for impulse purchases sometimes. So I don't write doctor's notes for my patients. Like if a patient is being discharged from an involuntary psychiatric hospitalization, as part of that discharge planning, we will sometimes write notes to places like work and places like jewelry stores where they spent $50,000 on something. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So I wouldn't count on it, but it does happen. One of the many benefits of seeing a psychiatrist. It's probably manic. So let's talk about what's going on with this person. So a lot of people who are diagnosed with depression will not have had a manic episode, or they will not have had or they'll only have had hypomanic episodes. So it kind of flies under the radar. And then when you start them on an SSRI, it kind of results in full-blown mania. Now, the really interesting thing is that in the United States, we are taught very strictly, like, don't give SSRIs to people who are bipolar without mood stabilizers. Interestingly enough, practicing habits in Europe are different. My understanding, I haven't practiced in Europe, but having learned about the practice of medicine in different places, my training program was really good about this. So we had some real experts in bipolar disorder, who talked about prescribing patterns and how they were different in different parts of the world. And apparently in Europe, people are more okay with SSRIs for bipolar disorder. Okay. It's the same. Okay. Yeah, so psychologist at a hospital in Denmark, no SSRI without lithium. So it's also the same rule now. Interesting. Okay, so maybe 10 years ago it wasn't. 12 years ago. Which is wild. Like, I was a psychiatry intern 12 years ago.
We only have half votes. Maybe tell them, like, you're going to lock it or something.
Huh?
We only have, like, 200 votes. Tell them we're going to lock the question. Get their vote in, maybe?
Okay. 28-year-old woman presents to the psychiatric emergency department in an acutely distressed, nervous state, complains of terrible anxiety, and the emergency department staff is unable to calm her down or gain an adequate history. On physical examination, she is slightly diaphoretic, that means she's sweating, slightly tachycardic, which means that her pulse is elevated above 100, and has mildly dilated pupils. She is on no medications. Which of the following substances would be most likely to appear on her urine toxicology results? Okay. So, what causes tachycardia, sweating, and dilated pupils? Caffeine, cannabis, cocaine, opiates, or LSD? Let's go. This is a really good point. Opioid withdrawal. Interesting. Good point. Good point. Okay. We got 240 votes. We're going to lock in a few seconds, chat. LSD. Okay. So while we're finishing up locking, let's explain a couple things. So one of the tricky things is we basically have drugs of abuse that are uppers and downers. And the tricky thing is, how do you know if something is an upper or withdrawal from a downer? And how do you know if something is a downer or withdrawal from an upper? Okay? And that's just because the drugs work in different ways. So pupillary dilation is a sign of your sympathetic nervous system activity, right? So when we are on uppers, we will get pupillary dilation. We'll get tachycardia on uppers. So this is a sign of an upper. Opioid withdrawal is a good answer, but the issue with opioid withdrawal is that it also has other features. So they may be nervous on opioid withdrawal, but opioid withdrawal is also characterized by diarrhea, nausea, cramping. It can also have like runny nose and things like that. So opioid withdrawal is a good thought, smart thought, but it just looks different. They may be nervous, but they'll be complaining a lot more. We'll see. What's our answer? Okay, good. Yeah, so caffeine intoxication can happen, but caffeine intoxication usually doesn't result in diaphoresis, especially. And I don't know what happens in pupillary dilation. And caffeine, I imagine caffeine intoxication may result in more of an irregular rhythm. Can be tachycardia for sure. Can be nervous for sure. Let's see. See if they give a good answer. Yeah, I mean, they also say not routinely text. Oh, so this is a tricky question, right? So what would show up on Utox? Utox doesn't include caffeine. So that's an interesting point. I mean, that's some test-taking stuff right there. But I think it's like pretty classic picture of cocaine intoxication. Yeah, so they say it causes the opposite. So withdrawal would cause opposite of pinpoint pupils. You'll get dilated pupils, you'll get tachycardia, but you'll also get other stuff. People with opioid withdrawal become really leaky. Diarrhea, like nose, like starts getting really runny, things like that. Watery eyes. 22-year-old woman presents with fatigue for 4 months. She also reports irritability, poor energy, dismal sleep, and poor concentration. She has maintained a rigorous exercise routine. Her oral intake has sharply dropped as she has lost a significant amount of weight, but explains she hasn't been as hungry due to increased stress. Her thyroid studies are normal. CBC reveals anemia, and she is not pregnant. In fact, she hasn't had a period in several months. Okay, this is a good one. Upon further questioning, which of the following qualities would you most expect to find in her social history? So before we look at the answer choices, I'm going to ask y'all, what do y'all think is, what do you think is her diagnosis? Okay. Okay, good. This is excellent. So some people are saying depression. Some people are saying birth control. Some people are saying anorexic. Okay. This is a really good example of differential diagnosis. This is a good example of what the practice of medicine is like. Her parents likely to praise her successes. She has a legal history significant for reckless driving. She has aspired to be a model. She is of low socioeconomic status, and she is a scholastically gifted perfectionist. Very good. Oh my God, this is tricky. Okay. So this is why we got to talk about differential first. Okay. So let's talk about this. Fatigue, irritability, weight loss, anemia, amenorrhea, and excessive exercise. Okay. This is really good. I love this. Okay. So we're going to do some good medicine teaching today, okay? Let's go through the answers. So some of y'all said depression. If she was depressed, is something missing for depression? So you can get fatigue, you can get poor concentration, sleep, you can get irritability, you can get weight loss. Okay? What's missing for depression? Negative self-attitude. Does she think poorly of herself? There's no indication of that. Is she sad? There's no indication of that. Is there a degree of hopelessness, suicidality, anything like that? No. Less likely to be depression. Second thing is we see that there's physiological abnormalities. So that opens the door to other things. Right? Because second thing is it could be anemia. So anemia is characterized, so if she has heavy periods, that's the other thing on the differential. She could just have really heavy periods. Because if I have really heavy periods and I become anemic, then I would have fatigue, I would have irritability, I'd have poor concentration, right? But what's the clue that she doesn't have heavy periods, chat? She is anemic. How do we know she doesn't have heavy periods? She hasn't had one. Excellent. Excellent. Right? Amenorrhea. Hasn't had a period in several months. Oh, whoops. Okay. Let me go back to this. All right. So this is what's really interesting. So the right answer is E. So she's anorexic. So maintains an exercise schedule. And this is where media portrayals, so here's the way to think about it. Media portrayals of anorexic as models is a good example of sensitivity and specificity again. Are models likely to be anorexic? What percentage of models are likely to be anorexic? That number may be high. What percentage of people who are anorexic are likely to be models? That number is actually far lower. Y'all understand? A high percentage of models may be anorexic. A high percentage of actors or actresses may be anorexic. But that doesn't mean that the majority of people who are anorexic are models. Okay? So, her parents are likely to praise her successes. So this could be true. This is not a bad... She may be very looking for external validation. Actually, in anorexia, that's not the... Okay, we're going to talk about anorexia. So, are people with anorexia sensitive to praise? Shockingly not. Let's think about this, right? You may say, okay, people are really, really anorexic. They want to get really thin, and so they'll be sensitive to the opinions of others. The exact opposite, if you really think about it. Because everyone else is like, bro, you're fine. And they're like, no, I'm not. It's actually the opposite. Makes a lot of sense, right? You'd think that someone who's hyper-focused on their appearance is also hyper-focused on praise. But the thing about anorexia is it's all about control. It's about living up to their own standard. They don't care about the standards of others. Highly perfectionistic, highly control-oriented. So let me put it to you another way to think about it, right? So if likely to...
What a lot of people do in quiet quitting.
Oh my God. If we look at... parents' praise. So what we see is that oftentimes there is a lack of validation. So these people can have a lack of validation. I think that's kind of like neutral. Oftentimes, anorexia is a way to exert control in your life. So this is the one thing that I'm going to control no matter what. In spite of feeling bad, in spite of feeling irritable, in spite of all of these things, this is my goalpost that I'm going to live up to no matter what. It is very internal, very difficult to treat. Very difficult to treat because forming an empathic connection with anorexia is very hard. Right? So if we look at the way that we treat mental illness as a therapist, a huge part of it is the connection. Once I understand someone and then I say something to them, hey, I don't think this is right? You're beating yourself up. That's not really fair. If they believe I understand them, they can receive that. The problem with anorexia is that they have a lot of difficulty. They live within a prison of their own experience. What the rest of the world thinks doesn't matter. And the problem is oftentimes these people have traumatic experiences with healthcare providers because I don't want to eat, and these people are going to hospitalize me because my potassium levels are making me prone to a cardiac arrhythmia that I could die, and they're sticking total parenteral nutrition, TPN. They're force feeding me. They're giving me glucose through the IV. They're repleting my potassium levels. I don't want to be here. I'm handcuffed to the bed. I hate these people. And with anorexia, this is a huge problem. This is why you see so many pro-anorexia communities, because they have a lot of difficulty connecting to other people. So they're incredibly isolated, and they're fighting a war within themselves. They are fighting a war against themselves. What they are trying to beat into submission is themselves. There is a part of themselves that wants to eat things. They want to eat so bad. Their body is starving. The body is telling them, eat, eat, eat. The mind is telling me burgers, whatever. Or even just a smoothie. Their mind is telling them, I want this, I want this. Their body is telling them, they're like, no. They fight against themselves. And then they crack. I feel terrible. I cracked. And what I hate about it so much was that it was delicious. I loved every moment of myself, but I feel so terrible about myself. I hate that this instrument, this loathsome instrument, loves calories. I hate it so much. I'm going to beat it into submission. Lack of validation from parents. Incredibly perfectionistic. So the scariest thing is... So, the unholy triad of psychiatric diagnosis, okay? I'm tempted to say the hardest thing to treat, but I don't know if that's true, is a comorbidity between trauma, anorexia, and addiction. And these three things go together. This is the unholy triad of psychiatric illness. So when I take someone in my rehab and we remove substances from the equation, they can no longer use opioids or marijuana or cocaine or whatever to regulate their emotions. As the emotions rise, how do they gain control of them? They become more anorexic. Literally, some of the hardest patients to treat when I've worked in rehabs have been people with comorbid addictions and substance use disorders. So, because if you kind of think about it, how do they deal with these feelings of loathsomeness? Right? How do they suppress their appetite? Cocaine. I have low energy. I feel fatigued. I'm irritable. I feel hungry. I hate feeling hungry. Let me use cocaine. So it almost becomes a game of whack-a-mole, where as I start treating the trauma, their emotional experience rises to the surface. Now they're grappling with trauma. Substance use increases, eating disorders increase. So it becomes this game of whack-a-mole where progress in one dimension makes it hard to progress in other dimensions. So what is the most common thing that is rampant in eating disorder treatment centers? Substance use. Right? So it's really, really difficult. And so perfectionism is really common. Very, very tight personality trait with anorexia. And people I've worked with who have anorexia, also BPD, are oftentimes very, very perfectionistic, very, very successful. 36-year-old graduate student comes to your office because of difficulty. Let me just see this real quick. It's like an addiction? Yeah, in a way. I wouldn't quite call it a standard addiction, but I would say it's a war for control. Anorexia is a war for conquering the self. Right? So if you look at like these like podcast bro kind of like attitudes, like a woman with anorexia is one of the best podcast bros on the planet. Optimization, perfectionism. I'm going to be perfect. I'm going to be great. I'm going to beat my impulses into submission. Incredibly brutal towards themselves. And it's really hard to navigate because if you have compassion for them, compassion for them is, how can I say this? Empathizing with them and having compassion for them are in two opposite directions. That's what makes anorexia really hard to treat. One of the things. Because I see that you're hurting your body. I see that you're hurting yourself. So I sort of like am stuck because if I express, I'm like, oh my God, you're hurting yourself. I wish you wouldn't do this, whatever. Right? We don't say that in psychiatry, but something in that domain. That is a lack of empathy. And if I am very empathic towards them, if I resonate with them, if I validate a lot of their feelings, then I can kind of move into the pro-ana dimension. So it's really hard for other people to connect with them, which is why they form such robust communities. And like they love it when there's a community of other people who sees them, sees their struggle. And it's such a weird kind of glorification because this has been huge in social media. You'll have these incredibly like anorexic influencers who have incredibly anorexic communities. And why is that? It's because when you struggle in these ways, and when you see someone else who's even thinner than you are, you're like, they can do it. Right? I'm an entrepreneur. I started my business 5 years ago, and you can do it too. I'm a spiritual guru. I meditated 5 years ago, and now I will teach you the secrets. Hey guys, I didn't used to know how to cook a single meal, and now I'm a chef. Here's how you can do it too. Hey, I didn't really like the way that schooling worked, and I didn't like society, so I started to become a homesteader. I have my own goats. I homeschool my own children. I grow my own peas. Here's how you can do it too. And for people who are anorexic, they're so isolated. And once they find a community of other people who gets them, right? And then we get into a really tricky situation because what you get from each other, what you get about each other, moves you in a particular dimension. It's really tricky, very hard to treat. Maybe people, well, for me, there are experts at it who I'm sure, are definitely way better. Maybe they don't think it's hard to treat, but I think it's a quite, how can I say this? It's like a rigid diagnosis. Like if we look at the, how optimistic treatment is, like what percentage of people get how much better? If you look at something like an anxiety disorder, a mood disorder, like major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, even PTSD, a lot of people get a lot better. With anorexia, it's really tough. The really interesting thing for me about anorexia is how many people overcome it without treatment. So something happens where people walk their own journey and they end up like being okay. Okay. 36-year-old graduate student comes to your office because of difficulty sleeping since breaking up with his fiancée 5 months ago. He's spending at least 2 hours in bed thinking about his ex-fiancée. His concentration is worsening and he's having difficulty completing his coursework. While he feels down, he is not suicidal and is seeking support of friends. He is attending most classes. He describes overall feeling tenser, especially at a bar. He has now noted a new onset of low back and shoulder pain. Several months later, your patient's mood is worsened. He feels worthless and hopeless that he will never find a girlfriend. He's lost a few pounds and has not resumed dating, preferring to isolate himself in his studio apartment. He is still feeding his dog, but has had to miss increasing amounts of work because he just can't get himself to get ready for class. What's the most likely diagnosis? Good. You guys seem confident. What do y'all think? Okay. We're going to wrap in about 30 seconds. This is me right now. Okay. So, key question here, Wicked Sick, is what's the duration? Right? So, depression versus adjustment disorder. How do we tell the difference? Okay. Acute stress disorder is basically short-term or early phase PTSD. Adjustment disorder with depressed mood is a potential diagnosis. He's having a depressive episode. Why, chat? What separates an adjustment disorder from a depressive disorder? Let's see if y'all can get this. 7 months later, he's still whacked out, doesn't seem normal. Good. That's a big part of it. Okay. So major depressive disorder is correct. Yeah, exactly. So with adjustment disorder, you'd start to feel better after a while, potentially. So adjustment disorders can persist for a long time if the circumstance is persistent. But what we see here that's really important is a progression of clinical symptoms. Right? So he's attending most classes, feels down. That's normal. Right? He's still functional. Having some difficulty concentrating. Right? So this is much more questionable. We don't know exactly what this is. Maybe adjustment disorder with depressed mood. Mood is worsened, feels worthless and hopeless. Now we're crossing into depression territory. We're also 7 months later. So now we're 1 year post-breakup. Isolating himself, lost a few pounds. Now we're seeing functional impairment. So people with an adjustment disorder have less functional impairment than depression. Yeah. Okay. Good. Adjustment disorder is when you feel sad due to circumstances. There's an event in your life that due to the virtue of the event, your mood is impacted in a significant way. That's an adjustment disorder. So a really good example is a breakup because it is normal to feel sad after a breakup. It's normal to want to isolate after a breakup. But a major depressive disorder, a major depressive episode has functional impairment. That is significant hopelessness, worthlessness that is persistent for a long period of time. Okay. Welcome, Kaho Raiders. Nice. Raider from Shibuya Kaho. Thanks for the raid. Yeah, so an adjustment disorder is when you feel sad in relation to circumstances. Okay. Let's do the next one. 32-year-old single successful Wall Street executive tells you that on weekends he likes to visit a dominatrix. His regular paid appointment with this person is described as humiliating and somewhat painful, but also very sexually arousing. While he admits that this behavior may be weird to some people, he enjoys it, can afford it, and it doesn't interfere with his work or other hobbies. Which of the following diagnoses is most appropriate? What do y'all think? We can go deep. Fetishistic disorder, frauderistic disorder, no diagnosis, sexual masochism disorder, sexual sadism disorder. What's correct? Did you guys watch our kink and fetish lecture earlier this month? Okay, so for people saying it isn't a disorder, what makes something a disorder? Regular ass person. Fraudurism. You guys know what fraudurism is? Rubbing up against things. I think, if I remember. Life impairment. Very good. Very good. Impaired function. Does this impair his function? Enjoys paid weekend visits to dominatrix. Causes no distress, does not interfere with work or hobbies. Right? Okay, we're going to close up. A few more seconds. Makes you dysfunctional. Right, okay. So, no diagnosis is correct. Now, if we want to get fun with it, if you guys paid attention to the kink and fetish lecture we gave, why do Wall Street executives enjoy visiting dominatrixes? Why do male Wall Street executives enjoy visiting dominatrixes? Power? Power means what? What's the relationship with power? Be precise. Come on. Role reversal? What are the roles? Good. They can afford it. That's true. Desire for loss of power. Now we're talking about it. Right? They are tired of wearing the mantle of decision making. And they may make a decision on Wall Street where they have to fire 1,000 people. And so there's a big part of the psychoanalysis of sadomasochism has a lot to do with the othering of people. Right? So it's sometimes nice to be othered. Like we talk about it from a sociological perspective in a negative way, right? Like it's not good to other people. We should understand that all human beings are human beings that have full lives and hopes and dreams and all this kind of stuff. But psychoanalysis has a really interesting perspective. Sometimes it's nice to be dehumanized. Sometimes it's nice to become an object for a little while. Sometimes it can be relieving to be othered. And I don't have to be me. I can become this other thing where somebody else has the power in the relationship. I'm tired of having the power in the relationship. Other maxing. Oh, that's so funny. That's actually really good. I love that. Yeah. Love this. Someone's quoting Hegel. In giving over control, they become the slave in the Hegelian master and slave dialectic. And the slave is free. Hegel, wonderful. Right? And if we engage in the Hegelian dialectic enough, we will transcend the dialectic. We have to lean into it. Like role play, yeah. Right? So role play has two elements to it, which I think a lot of people miss. Role play has two things that people like. One is becoming something. Role play to live out our fantasies. Let's do a vampire role play where you are the vampire and I am the victim. So role play is psychologically attractive because we become something else and we stop being ourselves. Right? Has two elements. We kind of think about it. There's a certain relief and joy to not being me. And there's a joy to being something else. Ravenloft, dude, I've run Ravenloft campaigns, but back in the day, Curse of Strahd. Ravenloft is not, mechanically, not the best setting. Very underpowered. Okay. We all role play all day, don't we? Well, hopefully not. It would be sad if we did. No diagnosis, no dysfunction or distress. Very good. Oh, no. 26-year-old man with schizophrenia is being discharged from his third admission to the psychiatric unit in 3 years. Okay, 3 admissions in 3 years. This most recent stay was prompted by an acute exacerbation of command auditory hallucinations and paranoia, and that resulted in bizarre behaviors such as lying in the middle of the road and berating customers that cost him his restaurant job. His symptoms are improved with pharmacotherapy, which he is tolerating, with mild side effects of sedation that are gradually improving. Which of the following time periods most accurately describes when his risk of suicide is highest? This is the kind of thing that I would not expect y'all to know. This is just kind of like one of these factoids that either you know or you don't know. So I wouldn't get too bent out of shape. At his first psychotic break, during his first hospitalization, in the week preceding this hospitalization, in the week while he is hospitalized, in the weeks following his hospitalization. What do y'all think? Yeah, it would be sad because then you don't get to be you. Okay, so hopefully not in the week while he is hospitalized. Hopefully not during his first hospitalization. In the week preceding his hospitalization may imply that he is the sickest at that point, right? That's when he's the most acute. At his first psychotic break, there's no treatment in place, so there could be some suicidality there. Let's close up. What do y'all think? We can wrap. Good. In the weeks following hospitalization. I don't understand why this is, really. But this is kind of true. It's just what we kind of know. Is that shortly after discharge is when people become schizophrenic? I mean, when people have high risk of suicidality? I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, it could be like they kind of say. There are some weird effects of medication that can make things acutely worse after we start it. So in adolescents and young adults, starting an SSRI can increase the risk of suicide in a particular window. There's a black box warning from the FDA around it. Starting antipsychotics is good at controlling symptoms, but really slows people down in some way and may have some... So it's kind of tricky, but like people who are actively psychotic are quite disorganized. Okay? So when they're disorganized, they kind of are not organized enough to commit suicide. And then once we put a little bit of antipsychotic on board, we kind of increase their organization. And so if there's some suicidality there, it can kind of like bubble up. The other way to think about it is in the case of someone who's depressed, when we start to treat their depression, their ability to take action increases. These are theories, by the way. We don't know if either of these are true. But it's been hypothesized that the reason that suicide risk increases after starting an SSRI in teenagers and adolescents is because we actually increase their motivation. But it still hasn't worked long enough to really affect their mood in a profound way. So it boosts their energy without really affecting their mood or their suicidality. We don't really know. This is just one of those data-driven things. Yeah, it could be linked to a depressive episode, something like that. Absolutely. Or, I mean, that's what this says, right? May sink into a depressive illness. Good job, dude. Bonus points for Pog Supreme. You're both Pog and Supreme. Okay, 30-year, we'll do maybe one more, okay? Last one. And let me see. Oh, no, I don't want to do this. Let me see how many we've got.
We have 17.
We have 17? Okay, let me just see. Because I feel like we can get to questions. Oh, let's do 16 for sure. Okay, we're going to do 16. Then we'll do Q&A. Come to Turkey? I would love to. Come to Turkey and do what, bro? Love to come to Turkey. Thanks for the invitation. Okay. A male therapist has been working with a female patient for over 3 years, enabling her to improve her self-esteem and confidence and to eventually divorce her emotionally abusive husband 1 year ago. The patient continually thanks the therapist and explains that she is sexually attracted to the therapist. He's initially taken aback and then somewhat flattered by her sexual interest. However, he also realizes that he feels a strong attraction to her and feels the need to care for her. Which of the following would be the most appropriate next step for the therapist to take? So what's really scary about this is I remember seeing some poll. I don't know the exact. Well, let's. Okay, you guys can read this. I remember seeing a poll about what percentage of therapists had engaged in relationships with their patients. And I think it was like 20 to 30%. It's like absurdly high. So do we want to act cold? Explore the patient's feelings in order to increase her erotic transference? Ignore the patient's disclosure of her sexual attraction? Seek supervision with a mentor or colleague? Or terminate or fire the patient from his care? People saying 2 or 4. Some people are like 5. Like, let's go. Kick her to the curb. Yeah, dude, like Fox Cloud is saying, like, look, date her. Like, this is not, that's not even an option, bro. What's wrong with this book? Fire the patient so that you can date them. Can we date her ex-husband? Nice, dude. Power play. Okay, we'll wrap up in a minute. Seek supervision. Termination is wrong here, chat. Only if she bad, bruh. Don't end it right away. 5 and then date her. Okay, now we can see. So I used to think 20 to 30% of therapists doing this stuff is shockingly high. But after remembering that sometimes people who are in chat wind up as therapists, makes sense. Okay. So we're going to terminate or fire the patient. Let's close it up. Okay, Oh my God, did you guys actually think terminate? Y'all were trolling, right? Please tell me you were trolling. Yeah, so supervision is the right move. Absolutely. So erotic transference is incredibly common. Okay. And I think erotic transference explains all kinds of stuff, like the friend zone, all this kind of stuff. If you understand erotic transference, you will understand a lot about love, sex, and relationships, actually. So, what is erotic transference? In order to understand that, we have to understand what transference is. So we have like a mask that we put on. It's not really a mask. That's not the right word. We have a normal way of functioning in the world. And there are all kinds of thoughts and feelings that we have deep down, impulses, that are suppressed, covered by our normal, healthy ego. And in psychotherapy, sometimes what happens is the therapist is relatively absent, like not in a bad way, but like they're not offering opinions. Okay? They're just like, they're not offering advice like normal people. So they're sort of like creating some space for whatever is in there to come out. And what's really actually, let's do this one real quick and then I'll explain. We're going to do number... I want to do the one on psychoanalysis. Don't we have one about psychoanalysis? Why is there... Yeah, here it is. Let's take a look at this, then we'll understand. 22-year-old college student presents complaining of having no goals in his life, not doing as well as he could in school, and desiring but having no serious long-term romantic relationships. He has not chosen a major and states that his indecision is paralyzing him from moving on with the rest of my life. After discussing various forms of psychotherapy with the patient, you recommend psychoanalysis 4 times per week. Which of the following is the most important reason for the frequency of psychoanalysis? Why is psychoanalysis 4 times a week? What kind of therapy are we doing that requires 4 times a week? Allow the patient to get enough support. Allow transference to build between the patient and therapist. Complete homework frequently to better learn about their issues. Prevent conflicts from arising between the therapist and patient. And require more intensive treatment due to the severity of illness. 4 times per week. Absolutely. What do y'all think? I'm going to run to the restroom while you guys answer. All right, what did y'all decide? Okay, good. So most of y'all got it right. Allow transference to build between the patient and therapist. So, if we go back to this question and erotic transference, okay, we'll explain this. So what is transference? And why the hell is psychoanalysis? What is transference? And why the hell is psychoanalysis 4 times a week? Like, what are we doing here? So, you'll have to remember that transference in psychoanalysis is based on, like, Freud's work. Okay, so what were Freud's like basic theories? What was his main discovery? Everyone's like, oh my God, Freud was such a pervert. He's like, he's got the anal phase and the phallic phase, and he's all about the dick, right? What we forget about the brilliance of Freud is the things that he discovered we take for granted. His big contribution is, hey, there's a thing called the unconscious. His big contribution is, not only is there a thing called the unconscious, but stuff goes on in your unconscious that you are not aware of that shapes your conscious thinking. Here's the brilliant thing. So if y'all are stuck, right? So this is such a good example, actually. We can look at this case of... We can look at this case of having no goals in life, 22-year-old, desiring, but having no serious long-term romantic relationships. He feels paralyzed from moving on with the rest of his life. So there are a lot of people who feel that way. I don't know what my goals are. How do I find my dharma? How do I find my purpose? I want a long-term relationship, but I don't know how to find it. I'm paralyzed with indecision. Puer complex. Where does that come from? The unconscious. So here's the big thing that Freud discovered. If you look at these problems, what you may think is these are problems to be solved. Okay, you have no goals. Let's use your conscious mind to go through a program where you can discover your goals. Hi, my name's Dr. K. I have findyourpurpose.com, where we have a $199 course that will help you find your goals. If you are someone who doesn't understand your goals, if you're a man who's lost in life, come to me, and I will help you find your goals and your purpose. You need to do A, B, C, and D. Here's the conscious plan to find your goals. Check it out, $199. Like, comment, and subscribe down below. I have desire, but have no serious long-term romantic relationships. Hello, I'm Dr. K. I'm going to teach you about the astrology of finding the right one for you, doing the astrological birth chart match. If we want to do this, you have to find the right person. It needs to be solved consciously. You can do this in your mind that you can be aware of. You do the thing in the mind, it'll fix. I have indecision that is paralyzing for me from life. Hello, I'm Dr. K, and I have Dr. K's Guide to ADHD and Doing Stuff, which will teach you how to deal with the executive function, teach you how to organize, teach you how to set appropriate goals, make you stop moving the goalposts. We will fix these problems that you have in your mind, right? If problem in mind, fix problem in mind. Easy. Freud realized something really interesting. He realized something that we've taken for granted and we've forgotten, which is that if you try to find your goals, if you try to find your partner, if you try to get over your paralysis, sometimes nothing works. Sometimes you sign up for this course and you do this thing, and then you try this, and then you try this, and then you try this, but nothing seems to work. And it's not that these people are hopeless. It is that there is something going on in the unconscious. And the unconscious is framing the rules of your consciousness. Right? And how does this look? How do you know if your unconscious is sabotaging your conscious? Because you literally say, this doesn't work, this doesn't work, this doesn't work, this doesn't work. Oh yeah, like if you don't know what your goals are, you should just major in something and you'll figure it out later. But then I can't major in this because your conscious mind rebels. Your conscious mind rebels. Oh, if you have trouble finding long-term relationships, just go for short-term relationships. But that doesn't work. See, when the conscious mind, when people give you answers and the conscious mind says, but, that is the conscious mind being puppeted by the unconscious. Because the unconscious mind knows that, oh, if you do this, then something will change. We don't want to do that. There's something that it's afraid of, which you're not consciously aware of. You're like, I'm miserable. Why would I self-sabotage? That's dumb. I want a relationship more than anything else. I want it more than anything else. Why would I self-sabotage? It's idiotic. Exactly. It is unconscious. It's not idiotic. It's actually brilliant. But you don't see its brilliance because it's in the unconscious. By definition, it is the thing that you don't see. So now Freud's got a problem. He's like, holy crap, there's this shadow government. There's this conspiracy theory. In your brain, there's the Illuminati that is controlling everything. And it is in the unconscious. And then he's got a problem. He's like, but by definition, we can't see it. So how do we deal with that which we cannot see? And so then he figures something out. He's like, when I sit in a room with someone for 4 hours a week, 5 hours a week, every day for an hour or 2 hours, eventually all the conscious stuff runs out of steam. And then weird stuff starts coming up. So he comes up with the idea of free association. He sits behind you because he starts to realize if you can even see my face, you're going to be like interacting with the world in some way. So we're going to remove you from the world. Because if you look at your conscious mind is related to the world. If you see an advertisement for a smoothie, you're going to get a smoothie. If you see an advertisement for a game, you're going to get a game. Buy my course to make sure that you can find your goals. Bruh. Oh, now I'm going to buy the course. It's all conscious masturbation. So he's like, you know what we need to do to access the unconscious? We need to get the hell out of the way. The conscious energy will deplete. And we're going to use something called free association. Stop trying to make sense. Don't even try to make sense. Forget about logic. Forget about all that stuff. Because logic can like circle jerk itself forever. And so eventually what happens, once the conscious mind runs out of steam, weird things start coming up. Right? And like another good example of this, if you leave a human being isolated for a really long time, they start to become psychotic. They have so little stimulation from the outside that their brain starts just like producing its own stuff. And here's the interesting thing. Freud would say the stuff that it produces is significant. Depending on what is in your unconscious, you will hallucinate a dog versus a cat versus a snake versus a person versus an angry person versus a pilot. All of that has meaning. The unconscious can be mapped through symbolism. So the purpose of the transference is to evoke something onto the therapist. The therapist becomes the canvas, and the patient becomes the painter. And whatever is in them will come out. But in order for that to happen, you can't have a lot of conscious input. You need a lot of time and space for this stuff to come out. Okay? And then once you see what comes out, you need to be notoriously absent so that they can project, so that the transference comes from them onto you. And then what do they see? And he's right. So this is brilliant. What he ends up discovering is something really cool, is that when you have a therapist, your daddy issues start projecting on the therapist. Your mommy issues start projecting on the therapist. Your issues start to come out, and you target the therapist because they're the only ones in the room. So let me put it this way. Here's another way to understand transference. If you and another human being are stuck on a desert island for a year, you'd eventually get fed up with them, right? Obviously. Now, here's the question. Let's say me and you are stuck on a desert island, and you get fed up with me. And now let's say that you and your neighbor are on a desert island and get fed up with each other. And you and your girlfriend or boyfriend are on a desert island, and you all get fed up with each other. How much of what you get fed up with is determined by me or your neighbor or your boyfriend or girlfriend, and how much of it is going to be shared? See, a chunk of that is going to be my habits, but a chunk of that is going to be the same for you. When you get fed up, you complain about the same thing with all people. Oh my God, why do I keep dating women? Why do I keep falling in love with women who don't love me back? And see, this is scary, right? You guys understand the difference between the unconscious manosphere and the conscious healthy gamer community? Unconscious manosphere. Why are all women taking advantage of me? The problem is in them versus the enlightened healthy gamer. Ha ha! Why am I attracted to women who don't give me affection in return? Why do I keep on winding up in the friend zone? Who is the power that controls? When you are unaware of the unconscious, you will say women are the problem. And they're all the problem. They're all the same, right? Women are all the same. No, bro, that is your glasses. You have shit-tinted glasses. Big brownies is what we call them. And any woman that you see will be filtered by your perspective that is in the unconscious. Can be men too, doesn't matter. This is what transference is. It is that which is buried in you brought to the surface. And basically the way that an analyst evokes the transference is by spending so much time with you that you get fed up with them. And the way that you get fed up with them depends on what your complexes are. My analyst doesn't say enough. My dad or mom should have talked more and I felt unheard. Boom. My analyst is just taking my money. I've been taken advantage of by people who are supposed to care for me. My mom or my dad took out a credit card in my name and maxed it out and left me with all of this debt. Boom. This is the value of transference. It is that which is subconscious within you that is brought to the surface. And now you know what your unconscious patterns are. They've been made conscious because you dump them, you vomit them out onto the analyst. And the analyst is trained for 5 or 6 years to not get caught up in that crap. When you start blaming them for taking your money, the normal human being will be like, look, bro, there's the door. If you think I'm taking advantage of you, screw you, you can go. I'm not taking advantage of you. Let me justify why I'm not taking advantage of you. Both of those are mistakes. The right move is to understand, okay, this is being projected upon me. The right move is that I am becoming the vessel for this energy. That's the right move, to realize that this pattern is coming from the patient and not get caught up in it. Very difficult to do. So what about erotic transference? Right? Oh my God, what's the case? You guys remember? Emotionally abusive husband, erotic transference. Is that connected in some way? I wanted to be attracted to my husband. I had some attraction to my husband. There's something about him I loved. And when you're in an emotionally abusive relationship, what do you have to do to your feelings of attraction? You have to bury them. And then they're buried. And then when there is safety, when your therapist is telling you, oh my God, that must be so hard for you. Girl, oh my God, girl, that must have been so hard for you. Oh my God, I can't imagine how difficult that was for you. And you're like, oh my God, take me now. They're just being validating and supportive, but something comes out that is the transference. And what kind of women date emotionally abusive men? The kind that may have had daddy issues. So now we get something deeper. I love you. I'm enamored with you. I want more of you. I can't get enough of you, says the daughter to the absent father. It's not sexual. I want daddy. And imagine how much that hurts. And this is why the analysts discovered the defense mechanisms. Because when a daughter wants daddy, right? She wants daddy. That's it. Simple. I want daddy to hold me. I want daddy. I want to be loved. I want to be taken care of. I want to be held. That's all I want. And how can a child tolerate that when daddy doesn't do it? You have to bury it. You have to defend against it because that hurt. The hunger of wanting a father's love is like one of the most devastating feelings on the planet. You'll become non-functional. So you bury it. Goes into the unconscious. Attracts you to emotionally abusive men. And then when you find a space that is empty enough, when you find a vacuum, it comes out. as the erotic transference. Biggest mistake you can make as a therapist is, oh my God, this person is into me. They're not into you. You are just doing a good job as a therapist. And so the transference arises, and that can take an erotic quality. This is Freud's contribution. Amazing. Truly brilliant. I want y'all to imagine for a moment what kind of mind has to discover that which cannot be seen. Seeing the Alpha Centauri with a telescope, difficult. Discovering not just that dark matter exists, but the nature of dark matter. What is inside dark matter? How to manipulate dark matter. That is brilliant. This is Freud's contribution. And the devastating thing is that we've started to crap on Freud, which not all of his ideas were great, but this one was pretty damn good. And then what's happened is we've fallen into the same trap that Freud saw, which is that we're all existing consciously. How do I fix this? 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 We have more solutions on the planet than we've ever had before, and we have the most problems that we've ever had before, from a mental health standpoint, statistically. We have more tools for mental health than we've ever had, and depression and anxiety are all-time high. Why is that? Because if we look carefully, what has happened? We've become a hyper-conscious society. And the unconscious has become completely unaddressed. And this is why there's a hunger for things like shadow work, for things like contemplative tradition. These things that pull us away from the world and put us back into ourselves. Self-exploration, not asking AI what your problems are. AI will never be able to tell you what's in your unconscious, because the moment that you ask AI, it becomes conscious. Your logic takes over. Your intellect takes over. It's like trying to fill up your stomach with water when it's craving calories. You can fill up your stomach with water, but it's never going to have calories. And I'm not saying that AI isn't useful. It can be useful from a logical standpoint. But I don't, and actually maybe AI, because I think we may have transference when it comes to AI. So maybe AI actually, have transference when it comes to AI. So I don't know. That's good. Let me think about it. We're absolutely hyper-conscious, though. And this is why when I talk about things like puer aeternus, everyone's like, what do we do about puer aeternus? And there are things that you can do. Like, I think there's deeper stuff. Like, so we're going to talk about anima and animus tomorrow. And it's really fascinating. I think there are certain spiritual practices that can target archetypes, and get into that later. But so I think there's a certain technological system in the yogic and tantric system that Jung, who understood these archetypal things, studied explicitly. Right? I have a beautiful book. I don't know if it's here anymore. On the psychology of Kundalini yoga, which is a series of lectures that Jung gave. It's not in this room anymore. It's upstairs. So I think there's a certain methodology that the psychoanalysts never had access to, which is meditation. And meditation can work on that unconscious kind of thing. A simple example of that is so if you look at meditators, they say there's a moment, normally dreams are what's in the unconscious. So your dreams are connected to what's in your unconscious mind. There's a lot of good arguments for that from the Western psychoanalytic tradition. Yogis said that too. But what the yogis did is purify the unconscious. They did shuddhi. And they said once your dreams stop being emotional processing, then they become messages from a higher power. Then they become the link to the spiritual world. But that only happens once your mind has been fully emotionally processed. As long as there's emotional stuff to process, that takes precedence in your dreams. So do your dreams have an extra paranormal significance? Not until you have emotionally processed all of your complexes. And up until that point, they're just emotional processing. So there's like value from a psychotherapy perspective, but not from like a spiritual prescience perspective. Really interesting. So erotic transfer is just the evocation of these feelings. And this is why, you know, if we look at this, this question, right? These are the puer problems. And the puer problem is an unconscious problem. It is an archetype that is operating deep within you and shapes the very way you see the world. Right? So it rigs the game against you, which is why nothing works. You're like, you're playing a game of blackjack against a dealer who's cheating. And then you can look up as many strategies to win a game of blackjack as you want. But as long as the game is rigged, you're never going to win. That's the value of transference. That's the contribution of Freud. He taught us fundamentally why we continually play the game and always lose. Guess I'm screwed. No, you're not. My whole point is that you're not screwed. And even if you think I'm screwed, right? I am giving you guys insight into something that is revolutionary. And if your response is, guess I'm screwed, there it is in action. It's right there in action, in you. Notice the reflexiveness of the thought, the automaticity of the thought. Have you really paused and processed? Have you dwelled upon the magnitude of what I'm saying? No. The unconscious is like, oh shit. This guy knows we're cheating. Quick. Tell him we're screwed. Think we're screwed. Generate the thought, I'm screwed. This won't work. Oh my God, how am I ever going to use this? I can't afford psychoanalysis. Quick, shut it down. Shut it down. Shut it down. It's too expensive. It's too hard to find. How am I even supposed to find one? Notice the plethora. Do you guys see this? Like, this is how the unconscious works. Notice the plethora. It's like pulling levers. Launch this firework. Launch this. Launch this. Launch this. Objection. 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 Where are all those objections coming from? Why aren't you like, that's so interesting. I wonder, I may have to think about it. I wonder if he's right. I wonder if he's wrong. Is that the answer? Is that what your mind produces? No. Your mind has answers. That's the power of the unconscious. Therapist propaganda. Yeah, look at these therapists, man. They're propagandizing. Oh my God. When salvation gets judged as propaganda, that's how you know that your unconscious is going buck wild. So we are on autopilot. For those of y'all that are in memberships and have seen the lecture on Vasanas, I think that may have been a gift lecture on the main channel because members were like, this is like the best ever. Yeah, you are on autopilot. But you don't have to be. Autopilot is what you are now. It's the mode that you're on. It is not your destiny. Okay, let me see if I can find a Slido link. Let's do some questions and then we'll wrap for the day. I just want to make sure that we have a little bit of time for whatever questions y'all have. I see stuff in chat. Vasana's all the way down. Yeah, 99% of it. When we verbalize our unconscious, does it not become conscious? How would you help it then? The tricky thing is that sometimes when we verbalize our unconscious, it becomes conscious. But sometimes the things that get verbalized in the conscious are simply the puppet strings of the unconscious. The best way for the unconscious to hide is to trick you into thinking it has been discovered. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled is convincing the world he doesn't exist. Unconscious works the same way. How do you get good at the differential diagnosis stuff without the experience? Like, what else could I do? I'm not in medical school, at least currently. I mean, you can study differential diagnosis. Like, you can study medical textbooks if you don't, but at some point, you know, human beings learn through experience. So there's going to be a limited value of what you can learn. It's like, how do I learn chess without playing a game? Like, you can read books on chess theory and you can learn quite a bit. But at some point, you know, at some point that's the right call. Like my brother was theory crafting epic builds in 3rd edition D&D. And I don't know if he ever played 3rd edition D&D. Okay, this is question. First question is, how can someone with BPD distinguish between reality and a distorted view? When a split is justified, how can I recognize it? How can I stop resisting BPD? Stop resisting or start resisting BPD? And start viewing it in a healthier way? What a great question. So how do you distinguish between reality and a distorted view? Okay. When is a split justified? Beautiful question. So in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, Yogi Patanjali talks about 5 modes of thinking. He's like, there are 5 ways the mind can operate. One of the ways is right knowledge, and one of the ways is wrong knowledge. Both are knowledge. Very, very brilliant insight. It's knowledge. It feels like knowledge, right? It is known by the mind. He's observing the mind. And he says the mind knows things. I know that my partner is cheating on me. I know that my friends hate me. I know that I'll be alone for the rest of my life. It's knowledge. Right? From the perspective of the mind, it is known. But it can be right or it can be wrong. I'm alone for the rest of my life. Turns out I'm not. But in that moment, the mind doesn't know. So how do you know if you have a distorted reality in BPD or you have a real reality in BPD? So the first thing is to understand what is active within you. So I'll offer kind of the yogic perspective first. When the ego is active and when your emotions are active. If your emotions are active without your knowledge, if you're like, yeah, I'm fine, I'm not angry, you're angry, then your mind's thinking is distorted. Okay, when I work with patients who have BPD, I'll ask them, okay, so you think that your boyfriend is going to break up with you. Is this you talking or is this BPD talking? They'll think about it for a minute. This is later in therapy. They'll be like, that's BPD. It doesn't change how much they're suffering from it, but they have awareness of the distortion. So now how do you know what splitting is fair or unfair? This is exactly how you know right knowledge or wrong knowledge. If there is splitting, it is not fair. By definition. So splitting is when I idealize one thing and I demonize another thing. This friend is the best friend on the planet. This friend is the worst friend on the planet. If you notice that black and white thinking, that is by definition wrong. Right? So in the yogic system in Vedanta, which is connected to the yogic system, we call this Advaita, non-dualism. This is neither good nor bad. It is. The more that you apply goodness or badness to it, the more distorted your mind becomes. Because reality is, the stone is there. I tripped over the stone. That's a bad stone. I didn't realize that stones could be good or bad. Oh my God, that's fascinating. Tell me, how does that work? It's a bad stone because I tripped on it. Oh, interesting. Where does the badness come from? It comes from your perception. You understand? So if there is splitting, that is one of the features, the diagnostic features that activates when BPD is exacerbated. When people under BPD are stressed, they will split more. There is no good splitting or bad splitting. All splitting is bad. And that's why the treatment for BPD, right? One of the treatments is dialectical behavioral therapy. What does dialectical means? It means holding the two opposites. This is neither good nor bad, or it is good and bad. So that is more accessible to the mind. And what's interesting about that is what we're teaching people with BPD is cognitive flexibility. So when you get good at emotions, one of the key features, if you look at someone who's good at dealing with their emotions and someone who isn't good at dealing with their emotions, what do they do inside of them that's different? The person who is good at dealing with their emotions is able to feel one emotion and is able to bubble up a contrary emotion at the same time. They're able to see the silver lining in the cloud. That is a skill, right? So on the one hand, it sucks to be dumped. On the other hand, I wasn't super happy in the relationship anyway. And there's a part of me that's actually relieved because this person was so unhappy with me. And I was trying and it wasn't working, Then finally they dumped me. They're like, enough is enough. You're pathetic. I'm not going to see you anymore. You're still a lump on the log. And there's a part of you that's like, okay, fine. Like, on the one hand, I feel terrible being alone. Also, like, it's kind of a relief to like not have to live up to this person's standards anymore. They can cultivate a contrary emotion. And it's not either or. It is an absence of splitting. It is both. Oh my God, I'm so excited. I met this person. And we're so deeply in love, Dr. K. Oh my God. I met this person and they're so in love. Oh my God. One emotion. Contrary emotion. Hey, this has happened before. Maybe I should be careful. Cultivate some anxiety. Maybe this is not a good idea. Maybe I should be worried about this. So literally, if you look at people who have high levels of EQ and low levels of EQ, we've done a bunch of research on this. One of the things is cultivating additional emotions. Very difficult in BPD. Okay, so how do you know if your thinking is distorted? If it's black or white, it's distorted. If you can't hold multiple emotions at the same time, it's distorted. Yogi Patanjali will layer on an additional thing if there's ego involved. If any part of your process, your thought process, is I am this way, but other people are this way, it's distorted. It is a distortion. Someone else can get promoted, but I can't get promoted. Someone else can get laid, but I can't get laid. There is an I factor. That distorts it. Now, this is where things become a little bit subtle because there may be certain things that are true about your life. So if you say someone who is 6 foot and makes $6 million a year, it is easier for this human to get laid than it is for someone who is 5 foot and makes $5 a year. That statement can be true. But they can do it and I cannot do it. That statement is false. There may be some way for you to do it. It may be harder. That is the difference between right knowledge and wrong knowledge. Right knowledge acknowledges difficulty. Wrong knowledge admits impossibility or projects impossibility, sees into the future, which you can't do. Right? I got rejected from 119 medical schools, and after 100 rejections, it is reasonable to think that I will never get into medical school. And that thought is wrong. It's a reasonable thought, wrong thought. Right? There is a certain formula to get into medical school. And the odds may be against me, but I can keep on trying, keep on adjusting a little bit. Right? And literally for my stats, like 1 to 3%, 1% of people with my statistics get accepted to medical school a year. 1% is not zero. It's 1%. Deck is stacked against me. Not every person who is 5 foot and broke can never get laid. 1% of y'all figure it out. You got to be in that 1%. That is the difference. So presence of a humkar is your mind making comparisons. Presence of emotion that you are unaware of. Are you tranquil on the inside? right? Look for emotions, cultivating different emotions. That's how you deal with splitting. No splitting is good. Okay? Next question. What's the difference between CPTSD and quiet BPD? Is it just a different name for the same thing? Not exactly. So, see, this is a failure of our diagnostic system. Is a meat pie really a pie? Well, a pie is something that I'm going to define as something that has a crust and has something filled. And is a lemon meringue pie a pie? Well, it's not filled. It's not like covered at the top, right? Or let's say I have a chocolate mousse pie that has no crust. It's just the mousse and whipped cream. Is that a pie? What makes a pie? So this is where, like, I think this is why we have to be like a bit precise with what we're talking about. I wish I had the PDM. Do I have the PDM here? Nope. Hold on. Maybe I can just pull it up on Amazon. I just want to show you all something real quick. So I'll give you an example of... Okay, I love this book. This book is great. I wouldn't recommend that you guys need to read it necessarily, but... So if we look at the PDM... No, zoom in. Okay. So the PDM takes things and breaks them apart. So the personality syndromes, the P-axis, the profile of mental functioning, the M-axis, the symptom patterns, the subjective experience axis. Right? So there is what someone feels, there is someone's personality, and then there is the way that their mind operates. And the PDM is beautiful. It breaks down the P-axis, or like let's look at the M-axis. Capacity for regulation, attention, and learning. So what is this person's capacity for attention? What is their capacity to regulate what goes on inside them? Capacity for affective range. That means what is the range of what they can feel? So someone with BPD has a wider affect range than someone who does not have BPD. They can feel more on both ends of the spectrum. Someone who has schizophrenia may have a restricted affective range. Their capacity to feel joy is actually reduced. Mentalization. How much can I... Mentalizing is understanding that actions are driven by internal things. So when I sit down and doom scroll, why do I doom scroll? A lot of people who fail to mentalize will be like, I doom scroll because I'm addicted, because I'm lazy, and they throw their heads up. Shrug. I doom scroll because technology is addictive. But if you think about, you don't doom scroll the same amount all the time. What is going on inside you that causes you to pick up the phone? Why are you picking up the phone more today and less yesterday? Oh, it turns out that I'm more stressed about this. I'm procrastinating because, or I'm anxious because I have a test in 2 weeks that I haven't started studying for. In order to deal with that anxiety, I'm going to pick up the phone, but I'm not consciously aware of it. That is mentalization. Differentiation and integration, identity. Who am I? How much of who I am is determined by what people think of me. If society sees me as a loser, if I'm a virgin, then society sees me as a loser. There's no difference between I see myself as a loser and society sees me as a loser. I don't care that you say that I have value as a human being even if I'm pathetic. No, you're wrong. Can you differentiate between yourself and other people? So I like the PDM because this is I think like one of the best diagnostic systems that we have. It takes something like a personality disorder and splits it up into lots of different functions. And those are just like a couple of the dimensions of the M-axis. So is it quiet BPD? Is it CPTSD? It's kind of like, I don't know. You can use either system. Either system has ways of organization that is useful. right? You can organize things at the municipal level, at the county level, at the state level, at the federal level, at the international level, at the household level. Which one of those is correct? They're kind of all correct, and they're useful in different ways. So this is why I think it's like useful to have a label and the problem with having a label. Because it's useful because if you're like, I've always wondered what's wrong with me, suddenly it turns out, oh, there's like, this is a thing. I didn't realize this was a thing. And specifically with BPD, I see the light bulb go off in people's head when they're in a relationship with someone with BPD and they don't realize it. And literally what I'll do is I'll flip out my DSM-5 and I'll start reading to them. Would you say that this person does this? Would you say they do this? Would you say they do this? Would you say they do this? And they're like, yes. Yes, yes. Oh my God, yes. And it's like, yeah, you're not crazy. Like, this is someone who has a diagnosis that is active for them, and that's part of what's causing your problems. So it can be eye-opening, it can be liberating, it can be explanatory, and it can be reductionist. Right? So BPD is what you are now. CPTSD is a kind of trauma reaction when the trauma is chronic. And the two overlap a lot. But they overlap because it's kind of like, okay, my house is in this city and it is within this county. Are the city and the county the same? No. Is my house in both of them? Yes. So with psychiatric diagnoses, you're like, am I this or am I this? It can kind of be like both. And also, your house is not sufficiently captured by the municipality. It is not sufficiently captured by the county. It is what it is. It has this many walls, this many bedrooms, and this many bathrooms. That's what the PDM looks at. You have this ability of differentiation and integration. You have this ability of affect regulation. You have this ability of emotional regulation. You have this ability of attentional regulation to break you down into your components and act on those directly. So are they the same? Not really. Do they overlap a lot? Sure. Definitely. I think it's like, what's the purpose of defining things one way or the other way? It kind of depends. Like, you should have a good understanding of it. What's the intervention? Right? BPD is useful because we have studies on BPD. So if you get diagnosed with BPD, then you do BPD evidence-based treatment. Should help. Do we have evidence-based protocols for CPTSD? Not so much. But that doesn't mean that there aren't clinicians out there who will work a lot with CPTSD. And if you look at like Dr. K's Guide to Trauma, I try to break trauma down, not from a diagnostic clinical perspective, but from a PDM perspective. It's not, I don't use that perspective, but that kind of attitude. I love the PDM. So for me, trauma is autonomic rewiring. Your autonomic nervous system, your heart rate, your blood pressure, your adrenaline gets hyper-triggered. Second thing is your emotional capabilities. Your emotions can get too triggered. Some emotions are too dormant. Some emotions are too loud. Third thing is your thoughts. The way that you think is altered by trauma. You have cognition that runs away from hope. Because hope is dangerous. Hope leads to disappointment. Better to not hope and not be disappointed than to hope and be disappointed. Right? So there's certain things about your thoughts. And then with trauma, we work on the prana system. So I've noticed that there's energetic things. So what's the P axis of functioning? What's the prana axis? What's the cognitive axis? What's the affective axis? What's the emotional axis? What is the autonomic axis? The physiologic axis? And then we get to narrative and identity. What is on the identity axis? Who do you think you are? Not like who do you think you are? Like literally, how do you conceive of your identity? Because that is affected by trauma. And then on the dharmic axis, or the karmic axis, how do you make sense on a global level of what your trauma is? Why did this happen to you? And this is really important. When I work with people with trauma, finding an answer to that question is like 20% of the treatment. And a lot of people say, how am I possibly supposed to find an answer? We help you find an answer. It's hard. It's an uphill battle, but you find that answer. So you understand things from a karmic perspective, from an identity perspective, from a physiologic perspective, from a prana perspective, from an energetic perspective, from an emotional perspective, from a cognitive perspective. We work on each of those things. BPD, CPTSD, both are useful constructions. As a clinician, I don't work so much on those. Right? I work on more from the PDM style of like, let's break this thing down into its constituent components, into its constituents, and target those individually. Okay? Let me just see. Okay. We got time for maybe one more. Good questions. Okay. What do you think of EFT tapping as an alternative to EMDR and healing CPTSD? I think it's a different mechanism, and there are some studies that show it's effective. So I think if you're someone who's got CPTSD, I think EFT, emotional freedom technique, works somewhere on the physiologic, mental, and pranic level, which EMDR doesn't touch. So EMDR works more on the like meditative level, on the affect regulation, attentional regulation. I don't think the two are alternatives. I think the two are probably complementary. And depending on where your trauma is, one may work better than the other. But there are some studies that show that EFT is effective, which is like really fascinating. Those studies are not usually in CPTSD because very few people study CPTSD because it's not even really a widely accepted convention. I think try different things until you find something that works. And then there's questions about personality disorders on the rise. And then what do you think of cortisol maxing reduction craze? I have no idea what that is. So if you guys post something about cortisol maxing or reduction, I will take a look. But thank you guys very much. I think, are y'all smarter than a med student? I'd say y'all are about as smart as a med student. I'd say y'all are there. By the way, so when we look at shelf exams and stuff, if you guys are wondering, 60 to 75% correct is where med students usually are. FYI. Right? So if you guys get 2/3 to 3/4 of the questions correct, y'all are where a med student usually is. But I think it is quite telling. I mean, some of these questions are tricky. They're factoids that you're not going to learn. But y'all's understanding of mental health is pretty good. Okay. Take care, everybody. Thanks for coming. We'll see y'all later. Adios.